This is the history of the full-size van and the coolest van customizations of the 1970s. The humble van transport of phone installers, electricians, and plumbers was suddenly cool, more than a decade before Chrysler would revolutionize the van business and cut the coolness right out of it. The full-size van was a blank canvas for limitless customization. First up is the Ford Econoline.
You're about to see the Battle of the Vans. 3 competitive vans in the all-new Ford Econoline. First, let's compare servicing. The other vans must be serviced from inside the driver's compartment. But the Econoline has an outside service center for oil, water, battery.
The Ford Econoline first appeared on the market on September 21, 1960, for the 1961 model year. A cargo van, a passenger van, also sold as the station bus and club wagon names, and a forward control pickup truck were available. Competing directly against the rear-engine Chevrolet Corvair van and Volkswagen Transporter, the Ford Econoline established multiple design precedents adopted by successive American vans, including the Chevrolet van and Dodge A100. While also a forward control vehicle, Ford introduced a mid-engine configuration to improve cargo access by creating a flat load floor and enlarging the rear doors. The engine was placed between the front seats. Following a lengthy United Auto Workers strike in 1967, the launch of the second-generation Econoline van was delayed almost 4 months, until January 1968. Instead of marketing the van as a 1968 or 1968 and a half model, Ford marketed it for model year 1969. Losing its Falcon roots, the second-generation Econoline became a heavier-duty vehicle, sharing many of its underpinnings with the F-Series full-sized pickups.
Hey, remember this? It's a 61 Ford Econoline, the original modern-day van, and here's a new original, the 76 Econoline. It's changing van history again. Check it out. It's the only van with a strong separate frame, and they move the engine forward 18 inches for more freedom to move around than in any other van. And no matter how you trick up your Ford, there's lots of room for bags and boats and beauties.
Us?
No, these beauties! See the new Econoline at your California Ford dealer.
For 1975, the Econoline Club Wagon was given a complete redesign, based on an all-new chassis. Ford became the first American manufacturer to adopt body-on-frame construction to a full-size van. The new generation Econoline would become common not only in its own right, but as the basis for other vehicles. With the full frame, the Econoline became popular as a cutaway van chassis. The design served as a basis for many ambulances and various types of trucks and buses. The shared drivetrain with the F-Series marked the beginning of aftermarket four-wheel drive conversions. During the 1970s, the Econoline became popular as a basis for van conversions, using the sparsely equipped Econoline cargo van as the basis. A luxury interior was fitted, along with extensive customization of the exterior. The 1978 Ford Econoline was Motor Trend's first ever Truck of the Year. For the 1992 model year, Ford introduced the 4th generation of the Econoline Club Wagon. While the 3rd generation chassis was largely carried over, the body and interior underwent a complete redesign. The vehicle has received several revisions during its production, with the most recent taking place in 2021. Toward the end of the 1990s, Ford began to phase out the use of the Econoline and Club Wagon nameplates. For 1999, the Club Wagon nameplate was discontinued in favor of Econoline Wagon. After the 2000 model year, the Econoline was renamed the E-Series, a name closer to that of Ford's full-size F-Series trucks. Next up is the Chevy van. The Chevrolet van or Chevy van, also known as the Chevrolet GMC G-Series vans and GMC Vandura, is a range of vans that was manufactured by General Motors from 1964 to 1996 model years. Introduced as the successor for the rear-engine Corvair Corvan, Greenbriar, the model line also replaced the panel van configuration of the Chevrolet Suburban. The model line was sold in passenger van and cargo van configurations, as well as a cutaway van chassis that served as the basis for a variety of custom applications. The first General Motors van was the Chevrolet Greenbriar van, or Corvan.
And here's the big new Corvan.
Its huge 191 cubic feet of cargo space is easy to get at through the big double doors, on the right and in the rear. And look at that low loading height. As with all Corvair 95s, the Caravan suspension is something special in trucks. Four-wheel independent coil springs, so even delicate instruments ride safely. Check into the Corvair 95. You'll find them and whatever kind of truck you want at your Chevrolet dealer's greatest show on work.
Introduced for 1961, which featured a flat-six opposed rear engine with air cooling inspired by the Volkswagen bus. Production of the Chevrolet Greenbriar ended during the 1965 model year. The first-generation Chevrolet van refers to the first G10 half-ton production years 64 through 66.
Take a look at these Corvair 95s. They're air-cooled rear engine and they're Scotch operating habits. They were big news, too, in the last 5 years. But for 64, they're just about the best in my book for dependable, light-duty hauling.
General Motors saw a market for a compact van based on a modified passenger car platform to compete with the already successful Ford Econoline and Dodge A100. The 1964 Chevrolet van had a cab-forward design with an engine placed in a doghouse between and behind the front seats. The implementation of situating the driver on top of the front axle with the engine near the front wheels is called internationally a cab-over vehicle. Engines and brakes were sourced from the Chevy 2, a more conventional compact car than Chevrolet Corvair. The first-generation vans were available in only the short 90-inch wheelbase and were only sold with the standard 153 cubic inch, 2.5-liter, 90 horsepower straight 4, or a Chevrolet straight 6 engine. A first generation is identified by its single piece of flat windshield glass. The first 1964 Chevrolet van was originally marketed and sold as a panel van for purely utilitarian purposes. Windows were available as an option, but were simply cut into the sides from the factory. In 1965, Chevrolet added the Sport van, which featured windows actually integrated into the body. GMC marketed its window van as a handy bus. Air conditioning, power steering, and power brakes were not available in the first generation vans. In 1967, the Chevrolet van received a major facelift, including moving the headlights down to a new redesigned grille, larger rectangular taillights, and a curved windshield. The forward control cab design was retained, but the doghouse was lengthened, widened, and slightly relocated in order to fit an optional Chevrolet small block engine. Engine cooling was improved with an addition of an optional larger cross-flow type radiator and a redesigned front that included a low-profile tunnel, allowing more fresh air to the radiator. In April 1970, GM introduced the third-generation G-Series vans as 1971 model year vehicles. In a complete redesign of the model line, the van adopted a front engine configuration, adding a hood to the body. While using a unibody chassis, the third-generation vans derived mechanical components from the second and third generation CK pickup trucks. G-Series vans of the third generation were produced by General Motors for 25 years, making them one of the longest-running vehicle platforms. The 1970 model year was the last year of the square styling, front drum brakes, and I-beam front axle. In addition to the 307 cubic inch, a 350 cubic inch V8 engine may have been available as an option for the first time in 1970. Next up is the Dodge van. The first Dodge van was the A100, which was a range of compact vans and trucks manufactured and marketed from 1964 to 1970. The A100 competed with the Ford Econoline and Chevrolet van and Chevy Corvair Greenbriar, as well as the Volkswagen Type 2. The range included a pickup truck and van, both with a forward control design, placing the driver on top of the front axle with the engine between the front seats, just behind the front wheels, which of course makes it a cab-over vehicle. From 1971 to 1978, Dodge transitioned to the B-Series vans. Sportsman passenger vans had side windows and passenger seating, not present in the otherwise identical tradesman models. Dodge pioneered the American 15-passenger van with the introduction of the Maxi Wagon, along with the other front-engine B-Series vans that were new for 1971. Ford did not produce a 15-passenger van until 1978, and GM did not introduce theirs until 1990.
High gas mileage? Come to Chrysler. Chrysler Corporation is #1 in gas mileage of the big three. Of all the vans with optional V8s and automatic transmissions, Dodge B100 has the highest EPA estimated mileage. Come to Dodge. Chrysler is #1 in gas mileage of the big three.
The 1979 van received a redesigned front end, including a new grille with wraparound turn signals. Lower-end models had single round lights, while Royal Sportsman and other high-end vans received 4 rectangular headlights. The van would keep this body style and the 1978 dash intact with only grille changes all the way through the 1993 model year. In 1994, the entire front end was redesigned, with flush headlamps to resemble the all-new Dodge Ram pickups, and new taillights wrapped around the sides of the van. The 1978 style dash was kept. In 1998, the van went through the most thorough update since its introduction in 1971. The engine was moved forward in the chassis to improve crash protection, and the front-end sheet metal was redone with a longer nose to accommodate this change. Next up is the custom van craze. The streets of the 1970s were littered with a variety of vehicles. Fast muscle cars, massive gas-guzzling land yachts your parents drove, new economy cars to handle the gas crisis, motorcycles always ridden without helmets, and of course, custom vans. At the time, magazines were still a huge moneymaker, and several important magazines appeared just as the custom van scene began exploding, providing a captive audience for aftermarket advertisers. In response, the big three automakers jumped on the craze and began selling partially customized vans straight from the factory. You could order a van with 1970s graphics, slot mags, wide oval tires, and swivel buckets right from your local dealer. The custom van show industry mushroomed nationwide, and the level of customization went off the charts, starting with window styles such as portholes, stars, diamonds, and teardrops. Pinstriping had been a cool thing since the 1950s, but it went full tilt during the van craze. Also, you could hire an airbrush artist to create some subtle, tasteful, understated artwork for the flanks. Some of the required themes were wizards riding unicorns, unicorns riding wizards, and Kiss. There were no minivans in the 1970s. This was a time before the van had been tamed, before it had been neutered into the soccer mom machine that it is today. In the 1970s, vans didn't carry spoiled kids drinking juice boxes and watching SpongeBob. Vans were basically a bedroom on wheels. No SpongeBob, no juice boxes, no trips to organized sporting events in the suburbs. Just lots of sex and recreational drug use. That's the way it was. You might say the 1970s full-size van was the crazy uncle of the modern minivan. The uncle that lived dangerously in the 1970s, then flamed out at the decade's end. Van owners in the 1970s took their shaggin' wagons seriously and decked them out to the hilt. Big shiny side pipes with mellow sound, plush interior carpeting for maximum fornication, duals to amp up the horsepower, and perhaps most importantly, the artwork on the sides. Nowadays, a van labeled Magic Mushroom wouldn't make it a mile down the road without being stopped, searched, impounded, and the driver imprisoned. Like a boat, vans of the 70s often had their own name branded on the side. My personal favorite was Frito Vandito. Sadly, the custom van craze lasted about as long and concurrent with the CB radio craze. By 1984, it was all over, as Dodge rolled out its all-new Caravan Minivan, transforming the van from rolling sin bin to mom's taxi. Well, there you have it, the history of the full-size van and the coolest vans of the 70s. Let us know what you think about this video. Leave us a comment below. Hey, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit that bell for future video notifications. Again, thanks for watching the Boca Brothers Car Reviews.